They called him broken. Among dragons, names were earned through strength, fire, and voice, but this one had none of those things. He could not roar, could not command flame with the thunderous force expected of his kind, and worst of all, he could not speak. Not in the way dragons did, with their deep, resonant vocalizations that carried meaning across mountains and skies. His throat produced only strained, silent motions, as though something inside him had never fully formed. To the others, that made him less than a dragon. To some, it made him a mistake. He lived on the far edge of the mountain range, exiled not by decree, but by quiet agreement. No one told him to leave, but no one stopped him either. The great caverns where dragons gathered echoed with laughter, roars, and the clash of pride, and there had never been a place for something that could not answer back. So he made his home in a narrow valley, surrounded by jagged stone and sparse vegetation, where the wind howled louder than any voice he lacked. It was quieter there, safer, lonelier. For years he survived alone. He hunted when he could, though his lack of a proper fire breath made it harder. Smaller prey, mostly. Enough to live, not enough to thrive. His wings were strong, his body built like any other dragon's, but without a voice, he lacked something essential, something others instinctively recognized as power, and so he adapted in silence. It was during one of those quiet days that the human appeared. At first, the dragon noticed only the scent. Faint, unfamiliar, carried on the wind. Humans rarely came this far into dragon territory. Those who did were usually hunters, armored and armed, driven by greed or fear. This one smelled different. No metal, no fire powder. Just sweat, earth, and something softer. Something calm. The dragon watched from a distance as the humans stumbled into the valley, clearly exhausted. He was young, not much older than a grown boy, carrying a worn satchel and a walking stick. His steps were uneven, and more than once he nearly fell before catching himself. Eventually, he reached a small clearing near the base of a cliff and collapsed beside a rock, breathing heavily. The dragon remained hidden at first, observing. Humans were unpredictable, dangerous even when they didn't mean to be. But this one didn't move like a hunter. He didn't scan the horizon for threats or reach for weapons. Instead, he simply sat there, catching his breath, then slowly pulled a small bundle of cloth from his bag. Inside were pieces of food, dry, simple, barely enough for a single meal. The dragon's stomach tightened slightly. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. Still, he didn't move. The human noticed him eventually. It happened when the wind shifted, carrying the dragon's scent, or perhaps just the subtle sound of movement against stone. The human froze, his hand tightening around the food as his eyes scanned the area. Then he saw him. For a moment, neither moved. The human's eyes widened, not in immediate terror, but in shock. He slowly stood, his posture tense but not aggressive. The dragon stepped partially into view, massive form emerging from the shadows, wings folded but ready. This was the moment it always happened. The fear, the running, or the attack. But this time, something different happened. The human didn't run. He didn't reach for a weapon either, because he didn't have one. Instead, he raised his hands slowly, palms open, a universal gesture of peace. His breathing was still uneven, but he held his ground. "I'm not here to fight," he said quietly. The dragon tilted his head slightly. The words meant little. Human speech wasn't something he understood fully, but the tone. The tone was familiar, calm, careful, not threatening. Still, he didn't approach. The human seemed to realize that. He glanced down at the food in his hand, hesitated, then did something unexpected. He placed it on the ground, slowly, deliberately, then stepped back. The dragon blinked. That had never happened before. He remained still for a long moment, watching closely for any trick, any sudden movement. But the human simply stood there, hands still raised slightly, waiting. Carefully, the dragon took a step forward. Then another. The human didn't move. When the dragon reached the food, he lowered his head slightly, sniffing it. It was simple, dry, but real. He glanced up once more, meeting the human's gaze briefly, then ate it in a few quick bites. The human exhaled softly, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "Guess you needed that more than I did," he murmured. The dragon didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. He stepped back, giving the human space again. For a moment, it seemed like that would be the end of it. But then the human did something even stranger. He pointed to himself. "Aaron," he said. Then he pointed toward the dragon. The dragon blinked again, confused. The human repeated the gesture. "Aaron," then pointed again, waiting. Took a moment, but slowly the dragon realized what he was doing. A name. He was offering his name, and asking for one in return. The dragon hesitated. He had not been called anything in a long time, at least not anything he would claim as his own. Broken was not a name. It was a judgment. He opened his mouth slightly, instinctively trying to respond, but no sound came out. The human's expression shifted, not to fear, not to mockery, but to something else. Understanding. "Oh," he said softly. He lowered his hands slightly, thinking for a moment. Then, slowly, he began to move them, deliberate gestures, shaping meaning without sound. Point to the dragon. Pause. Hand over heart. Then a simple shape traced in the air, curved, flowing. The dragon watched, completely still. Took a moment. Then something clicked. This wasn't speech. This was something else. A different way of talking. The human repeated the gestures more clearly, slower this time. Then pointed to the dragon again as if asking, "Do you understand?" The dragon hesitated, then slowly lifted one claw. Carefully, awkwardly, he mimicked the motion. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but enough. The human's face lit up immediately. "Yes," he said softly, a smile breaking through his exhaustion. For the first time in his life, the silent dragon had been understood. Dragon. At first, their communication was slow, painfully slow by any normal standard, but to the silent dragon, it felt like something extraordinary unfolding. For the first time in his life, he wasn't being judged by what he couldn't do. Instead, someone was trying to understand what he could. Aaron returned the next day, and the day after that, always cautious, always respectful, never pushing too close unless the dragon allowed it. Each time he brought a little food, never much, just enough to share, and each time he added something new to their growing system of signs. Simple things at first: food, water, safe, danger. He used his hands, his expressions, even his posture to reinforce meaning, repeating patiently until the dragon began to recognize the patterns. The dragon learned quickly, faster than Aaron had expected. It wasn't just imitation, it was understanding. Within days, the dragon could respond with basic gestures of his own. A tilt of the head became question. A slow tap of his claw against stone meant yes. A sharp scrape meant no. Aaron adapted just as quickly, shaping his signs to match what the dragon could physically do. Where human fingers could form delicate shapes, the dragon used broader movements. Wings shifting, claws tapping, head lowering or rising in deliberate ways. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. And for the first time, the silence wasn't empty anymore. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the jagged cliffs, painting the valley in shades of gold and shadow, Aaron pointed to the dragon again. "Name," he said softly, then repeated the sign they had developed for it. A simple gesture, hand over heart, then outward. He waited this time, not offering a suggestion, not assuming, just waiting. The dragon stilled. This was harder than learning words. This was identity. For so long, he had been nothing but what others called him. Broken, worthless, lesser. Those weren't names, they were chains. And now, for the first time, he was being asked to choose something for himself. Slowly, uncertainly, he lifted one claw. He hesitated, then traced a shape in the dirt. Not letters, he didn't know those, but a symbol. A long, curved line like a flowing current with a small break near the center. And then it continued. Aaron leaned forward slightly, studying it. "Flow, but interrupted," he murmured, half to himself. He looked up at the dragon. "Something that continues, even after it's broken." The dragon watched him closely. Aaron smiled faintly. Cairo, he said. The dragon blinked. Aaron repeated it slower. Kai-aro. Then he made the sign for name again, followed by the sound. The dragon considered it. It wasn't something forced onto him. It wasn't a judgment. It was chosen. He tapped the ground once beside the symbol. Yes. Aaron's smile widened. Cairo, he said again, more certain this time. For the first time, the dragon had a name. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between them grew stronger with each passing moment. Cairo began to move more freely, less cautious, more curious. He followed Aaron at a distance sometimes, watching as the human explored the valley, gathering herbs, repairing his worn supplies, or simply sitting and resting in the quiet. In return, Aaron learned Cairo's rhythms, when he hunted, when he rested, when he preferred solitude. They didn't need constant interaction. Just the knowledge that the other was there was enough. But something else began to change too. Cairo's fire. At first, it had always been weak, uneven, unreliable. But as their communication improved, as Cairo grew more confident in expressing himself, that began to shift. One afternoon, while Aaron was practicing new signs, this time for sky, fly, and free, Cairo tried to respond, and a small flame flickered from his mouth. It startled them both. Not because it was large, but because it was controlled. Cairo froze, eyes wide, expecting the usual loss of control to follow. But it didn't. The flame lingered for a moment, then faded. Aaron's eyes lit up. You did that, he said, quickly signing you and fire together. On purpose. Cairo looked at him, uncertain. Aaron repeated the signs more clearly, then added another, control. Cairo hesitated, then tried again. This time he focused, not on forcing the flame but on understanding the feeling behind it, the same way he had learned the signs. Slowly, carefully, a small flame appeared again, steady, warm, not destructive. Cairo let out a silent breath, the flame fading as he did. For the first time in his life, his fire had obeyed him. Aaron grinned. See? Nothing broken about that. But not everyone saw it that way. High above the valley, unseen by either of them, a shadow moved against the clouds. Another dragon. It had been watching for days now, drawn by something unusual. Not the human alone, but the interaction. The communication. The impossible sight of a dragon behaving differently. It circled once, silently, then turned back toward the mountains. The news spread quickly. By the next morning, Cairo felt it before he saw it. A shift in the air, a pressure that hadn't been there before. Instinctively, his body tensed, wings pulling closer to his sides as he scanned the sky. Aaron noticed immediately. What is it? He asked, signing danger. Cairo didn't answer right away. Then shadows passed overhead. Not one. Several. Dragons. They descended without warning, their massive forms cutting through the air before landing along the edges of the valley, surrounding it in a loose but unmistakable formation. Their eyes locked onto Cairo immediately, cold, assessing. Aaron stepped back instinctively, heart racing. Cairo moved slightly in front of him, not aggressively, but protectively. One of the larger dragons stepped forward, his presence heavy with authority. His gaze shifted briefly to Aaron, then back to Cairo. You live, he said, his voice deep and resonant. Cairo said nothing. He couldn't. The dragon's eyes narrowed slightly. And yet, you consort with humans. The tone made it clear that wasn't curiosity. It was accusation. Aaron swallowed hard, glancing at Cairo. What are they saying? He signed quickly. Cairo didn't respond. His focus remained on the dragons in front of him, tension building in his stance. Another dragon spoke, her voice sharper. We were told you had found a way to survive despite your condition. The pause was deliberate, cruel. But this, she continued, gesturing toward Aaron with a flick of her wing. This is not survival. This is weakness. Cairo's claws tightened against the ground. Aaron felt it immediately. Hey, he said softly, stepping slightly closer. Not in front. Not behind. Beside him. He made a quick sign. Calm. Cairo's breathing slowed, just slightly. The first dragon stepped closer. You were given a chance to exist, he said. That was mercy enough. Do not disgrace what little remains of your kind. Something in Cairo shifted. Not fear. Not shame. Something else. He lifted his head slightly, meeting the dragon's gaze directly. Then slowly, he moved. His claw lifted, forming the simplest sign he knew. No. The dragons stilled. Confusion flickered across their expressions. Cairo moved again, more deliberately this time. He pointed to himself, then to Aaron, then placed his claw against his chest. Together. The meaning wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough. A low rumble spread among the dragons. Impossible, one muttered. The lead dragon's gaze sharpened. You claim understanding with a human? Cairo didn't hesitate. He nodded. The tension in the valley thickened instantly, because this wasn't just unusual. It challenged everything they believed. And they were not here just to observe anymore. Dragon. The silence that followed Cairo's sign defiance was heavier than any roar. The gathered dragons did not erupt into immediate violence. If anything, their stillness was far more dangerous. They were not creatures that acted without thought. They judged, weighed, and decided with the patience of beings who had lived for centuries. But what Cairo had just done, what he had shown, was something they had no framework for. A dragon who could not speak, communicating. Not just reacting, not just surviving, but choosing. And worse, choosing a human. The lead dragon stepped forward slowly, his claws pressing deep into the stone with each deliberate movement. You presume much, he said, his voice low but carrying undeniable authority. To stand before your own kind and deny their judgment. His gaze flicked briefly toward Aaron, then back to Cairo. And to defend a human as if it were equal. Cairo didn't move. Beside him, Aaron could feel the tension like a physical force pressing down on his chest. His instincts screamed at him to run. But he didn't. Not this time. Slowly, carefully, he raised his hands and made a sign toward Cairo. Stay calm. Cairo's eyes flicked toward him for just a fraction of a second. Just enough. His breathing steadied. The second dragon, the sharper-voiced one, tilted her head slightly. It responds to him, she observed. Not with instinct, but with understanding. That is precisely the problem, the leader replied. A dragon's strength lies in its nature, not in imitation of lesser creatures. Aaron swallowed, then did something that surprised even himself. He stepped forward. Not aggressively, not challengingly, just enough to be seen clearly. I'm not trying to change him, he said. His voice steady despite the fear clawing at his throat. He raised his hands slowly, repeating the signs as he spoke, hoping they might understand something through motion if not meaning. I'm helping him understand himself. The dragon's attention shifted to him fully now. A human, speaking in their presence without trembling. The leader's gaze narrowed. You speak as though you have a place here. Aaron hesitated, but only for a second. I don't, he admitted. But he does. Cairo shifted slightly beside him. That answer didn't satisfy the dragons, but it didn't provoke immediate hostility either. Instead, it deepened the scrutiny. Then let us see what place he truly holds, the leader said at last. The air changed instantly. This was no longer a conversation. It was a test. Without another word, the dragons moved, spreading out, their massive forms creating a wide circle around Cairo and Aaron. Not a trap, not exactly, but not an escape either. The ground beneath them seemed to hum with the weight of what was about to happen. Aaron's pulse quickened. Cairo, he signed quickly, careful. Cairo didn't look at him this time. His focus was entirely on the dragons now, his body tense but not panicked. The faint glow beneath his scales had returned, but it wasn't flickering wildly. Pulsed slowly, in rhythm with his breathing. Good. He was holding control. The leader stepped back, giving space, then spoke. You claim this creature has strength, he said, addressing the others but watching Cairo. that it is not broken. He paused, then added, "Prove it." No further explanation was needed. The first attack came without warning. One of the younger dragons lunged forward, not with full lethal force, but fast enough to test reflexes. His claws struck toward Cairo's side sharp, precise. Cairo reacted instantly, not with panic but with movement. He stepped back, wings flaring just enough to shift his balance, the strike missing him by inches. A small burst of flame escaped his mouth. Not directed, not intentional, but contained. The watching dragons didn't react. They were measuring. Another came from the opposite side. A sweeping tail strike aimed to knock him off balance. Cairo ducked low, claws scraping against stone as he adjusted, the tail passing over him with a rush of displaced air. Eren clenched his fists, forcing himself not to interfere. This wasn't his moment. This was Cairo's. The attacks continued, not overwhelming, but relentless. Each dragon stepping in, testing a different response. Speed, awareness, control. Cairo moved through it, not perfectly, not flawlessly, but he adapted. Each movement more precise than the last. Each breath more controlled. But then, they changed the test. The sharp-voiced dragon stepped forward this time, her gaze cold and calculating. Instead of striking Cairo, she turned toward Eren. Everything in Cairo shifted instantly. "Wait!" Eren started, but it was too late. The dragon moved fast. Faster than before. Her claws stopping just inches from Eren's chest. The force of her movement alone enough to send him stumbling backward. It wasn't a strike. It was a threat. A deliberate one. Cairo reacted. Not with movement. With fire. A surge of heat built within him. Stronger than anything before. Rising fast. Dangerously fast. The glow beneath his scales flared bright, spilling outward as instinct screamed at him to unleash everything. To protect, to destroy, to end the threat immediately. The valley seemed to hold its breath. This was the breaking point. If he lost control now, everything would be proven true. Ka! Eren started, then stopped himself. No shouting, no panic. Instead, he did the only thing that had ever worked. He signed. Slow, clear, breathe. Cairo's vision narrowed, the world reduced to heat and instinct, until that single, familiar motion cut through it. Breathe. His body trembled. The fire within him surged, pressing against the edges of control. Hold. He forced the inhale. Painful, burning, but contained. Release. The flame came, but not as an explosion. As a stream, focused, precise. It shot forward. Not at the dragon threatening Eren, but just in front of her. A controlled line of fire that forced her to step back without causing harm. The entire valley froze. Cairo stood there, breathing hard, but steady. The fire faded, and he didn't lose control. The sharp-voiced dragon narrowed her eyes slightly, stepping back fully now. Not injured, not threatened, but reconsidering. The leader stepped forward again, his gaze locked onto Cairo. "You held it," he said slowly. Cairo didn't respond with movement this time. He didn't need to. The proof was still in the air. Eren exhaled shakily, his heart still racing. He looked at Cairo and gave a small, quick sign. "You did it." Cairo's gaze flicked to him briefly, then back to the dragons. Steady, unbroken. The leader studied him for a long moment, then, finally, he inclined his head. Not deeply, not fully, but enough. "It seems," he said, his voice quieter now, "that silence does not mean weakness." A ripple moved through the gathered dragons. Not agreement, not yet, but something close to it. Respect. And as Cairo stood there, surrounded by the very beings who had once dismissed him, one truth had become undeniable. He had never been broken. He had simply been unheard. Dragon. Respect, once earned, does not come quietly among dragons, but neither does it settle easily. Though Cairo had proven himself in the valley, holding control where others expected him to fail, the shift in how he was seen was still fragile, still uncertain. Some of the elders now watched him with cautious interest rather than dismissal, but others remained unconvinced. their pride resisting the idea that something so different could still be worthy. That fragile balance was shattered before it could settle, because the threat that arrived next did not care about dragon tradition, or pride, or doubt. Came with fire, steel, and purpose. The first sign was the sky. Dark streaks cut across the horizon. Not clouds, not natural movement, but something faster, sharper. Aaron noticed it first, standing near the edge of the valley as the wind shifted unnaturally. A low hum followed, faint at first, then growing louder. "Cairo," he said quickly, raising his hands. "Danger, sky." Cairo reacted instantly, lifting his head, senses sharpening. The dragons above, those who had remained after the test, turned their attention outward as well. Within moments, the shapes became clear. Airships, human-made, armored, and moving in formation. But these were not the scattered hunters from before. These were organized, prepared, designed for war. "They learned," Aaron muttered under his breath, a chill running through him. "They're not hunting anymore. They're invading." The lead dragon's expression darkened as he stepped forward, wings unfurling slightly. "They come in numbers," he said, his voice low, "and with intent." A loud crack split the air. The first projectile struck the far edge of the valley, exploding in a burst of energy that scorched the ground and sent debris flying. Another followed, then another. There was no warning, no hesitation. This was an attack. "Take the sky!" One of the dragons roared, launching upward with a thunderous beat of wings. Others followed immediately, surging toward the incoming airships. Fire lit the sky as dragons and machines collided, the sound of impact echoing across the mountains. But not all of the threat remained above. From the lower passes, armored units advanced, human soldiers equipped with specialized weapons, their movements coordinated and relentless. Nets crackled with energy. Devices hummed with power designed specifically to counter dragons. Aaron's heart sank. "They came for all of you," he said quietly. The valley was no longer safe. Cairo felt it, not just the danger, but the scale of it. This wasn't something he could avoid, or outmaneuver, or observe from a distance. This was chaos. This was everything at once: noise, heat, movement, threat. The kind of overwhelming storm that would have broken him before. His breathing quickened. The glow beneath his scales flared. For a moment, it threatened to spiral. Then, Aaron stepped beside him. Not in front, not shielding him, just there. He raised his hands, steady despite the chaos. "Breathe." Cairo's gaze snapped to him. Everything else faded, just slightly. Not gone, but distant. "Hold." The fire within him surged, but it didn't escape. "Release." A controlled breath left him, heat flowing outward in a steady wave rather than an explosion. Cairo's stance shifted. Not defensive. Ready. The first group of soldiers broke into the valley moments later, weapons raised, eyes locking onto the nearest target, Cairo. "Secure that one," a voice shouted. They saw him as the weakest, the easiest. That was their mistake. Cairo moved before they could fire. His wings snapped open, not for flight, but for momentum, as he launched forward, closing the distance in a single powerful motion. A net fired toward him, crackling with energy. But this time, he didn't panic. He adjusted. A slight shift of his body, a calculated movement. Then a precise stream of fire cut through the net midair, destroying it before it could reach him. The soldiers faltered. Cairo didn't stop. He landed between them and Aaron, claws striking the ground with force. Another controlled burst of flame forced the attackers back. Not wild, not destructive, but exact. Each movement deliberate, each action chosen. Above, the battle in the sky intensified. One of the airships veered off course, trailing smoke as a dragon tore through its side. But another took its place immediately, firing a concentrated blast that struck a dragon mid-flight, sending it crashing toward the mountainside. Cairo saw it, felt it. Something inside him shifted again. Not fear, responsibility. He looked at Aaron just for a moment. Aaron understood immediately. "You don't have to stay," he said, signing quickly. "Go." Help. Cairo hesitated. Then Aaron gave a small, steady nod. I'm safe. It wasn't entirely true, but it was enough. Cairo turned and leapt. This time his wings carried him upward. Not uncertain, not struggling, strong. The air rushed past as he climbed, the chaos of battle unfolding around him. Dragons clashed with machines, fire meeting steel, instinct meeting strategy. And in the middle of it all, Cairo found his place. An airship targeted one of the elder dragons, its weapons charging for a direct hit. Cairo saw the angle, the timing, something he wouldn't have understood before. Now he did. He angled his wings, diving fast. The airship fired. But Cairo was already there. A precise burst of flame struck the weapon system mid-charge, destabilizing it and causing the blast to misfire harmlessly into the sky. The elder dragon turned, surprise flashing across his expression as he realized what had happened. Cairo didn't wait. He moved again, faster now, more confident. Each movement guided not just by instinct, but by awareness, by understanding. Below, the ground battle shifted as well. Without Cairo as an easy target, the soldiers were forced to divide their attention, their formation breaking under pressure from the remaining dragons. Within minutes, the tide began to turn. Airships fell. Soldiers retreated. The coordinated assault unraveled into scattered resistance, then into full withdrawal. And just like that, it was over. The valley fell into a heavy silence, broken only by the distant echoes of retreating engines and the slow settling of dust. Cairo landed near the center, his breathing steady despite the battle he had just fought. No uncontrolled flames, no collapse, just controlled heat, contained and calm. Aaron ran toward him, relief clear in every step. "You're okay," he said, signing quickly. Cairo lowered his head slightly, nudging him in response. Above them, the dragons began to land one by one. The leader approached slowly, his gaze fixed on Cairo, not with doubt this time, but something far more certain. "You did not speak," he said quietly. Cairo met his gaze. The dragon inclined his head, deeper than before. "But you were heard." A ripple moved through the others, not hesitation now, but acknowledgement. Acceptance. Cairo stood there, the wind moving gently around him, the silence no longer empty, but full of meaning. He had never needed a voice, because in the end, he had found something stronger. Dragon.